Okay, so let's take a look at Azure Repos in Azure DevOps. So first thing we do is go sign up at Azure DevOps. Can start for free with basic level. Click on start free. You can use your Azure credentials or Outlook account and connect to DevOps. You can also use GitHub account to start. Once you sign up, you will have to create a project with name, description, then private repo. You can enable the public repo, but I'm not enabling this because of internal team abuse. It's better to not have public project in that case. So keep things private and click create project. So once you do, you will have your project that looks like this here, right? I already covered the boards part. I explained all the items that goes within boards. So now let's take a look at repos. So click on repos. It will tell you to get started by cloning this particular repository on your own computer. So you make sure to use your Git for Windows or for Linux or any other plugins that you have. Add your Git credentials and use that to connect to this particular repository. You can also push some sample to that repository from command line. You can also import a repository here so that you won't have to worry about setting things up. Just connect your GitHub and import the repository. That also do. Okay, you can also initialize a main branch with readme or git ignore. So if we choose the default git.gitignore, you can also initialize the same, right? You can use this as a main branch. So that's a start. Currently we are empty, and let's keep it that way till we manually handle some of the repositories, right? Now let's take a look at another section, which is commits. So every time you create your repository, there will be commits that you can do. So this section is only accessible when you add some repository, right? So in this case, what we can do is it's time to connect to our GitHub repository. So let's click import. Here we can give it some GitHub URL and click import. It will require authentication. You can add username and password for that, right? So let's take a look at that process. Now what I will do is I will go to GitHub and create a new repository. I want to make it private because I want to access this within my DevOps Azure, right? So I can type in DevOps as repository name under my account, right? Next thing, I will just say DevOps demo for DevNami. Next thing, I can add readme, right? Then I can choose a license. So I will stick with MIT license. I can choose template none, nothing specific, and I will just create a repository. Now I can access this particular repository from my desktop. Alternatively, what I will do is I will just connect my Azure DevOps to this particular directory, right? So I will just click import, choose the repository type as git, right? Then you clone the URL. So here it's the URL that we will copy. Requires authentication, so I will type in my details. I will also have to type the password. Now click import, and from there here you see clone URL is incorrect. So let's try to find out if we missed. Okay, so let's take a look at clone URL. Okay, so here you can choose this particular git one, so I can copy this, right? So accidentally I just used the URL which is not accepted because .git format is the format for clone URL. Click import. Here now let's change the visibility, change to public. I want to make this repository public. I have read understand the effects, right? So make this repository public, and let's try and paste the password. Now I made the repository public. Let's try and get this, and we have our repository imported here. No need to use authorization, right? So let's take a look at the import. It is successful. I can navigate to code. Currently we don't have anything, however the content of that repository are visible. Now I can take a look at variety of options we have here. So initial commit, you can see I have made it will be visible here. There will be pushes, so anything I push from here or desktop or git for desktop, those will be listed here. Now comes the branches part. You can also take a look at this being the main branch. I can also see the other branch and can also trigger from this point onwards, and based on tags commits I can make those branches. So work items I can link to specific branch, right? So if you are doing anything within boards that you want to link to this branch, you can do so, right? So same with the tags option. You can create a new tag, assign it to specific commits, tags and branches, right? So both the branches and tags have that options. Finally there is pull request. So unless you have teams added, the pull request doesn't make sense, because you will find that in order to do some correction or changes within the team, you need a team and you need to add them to even for a pull request. You can as a only person within an organization do that too, but this being a team activity, you need team before you can do some pull request, right? So here we can choose the branch. We choose main branch. There are no changes to merge, right? So if there are any or pushed by some other team member, you can see the changes and then you can use the pull request there, right? So what we have done so far is we added one of the repositories. We managed to add some content here. I can also take a look at the contents here, history of changes, right? I can also set up build, but I want to hold that on considering we have pipelines and test plans to go through, so the build would make sense. But for the flow so far, let me cover things like, let's say I created Azure DevOps account, then added new project within DevOps. Second thing I have done is connected one of the GitHub repo in public option. I cloned it here within the repos section, and that repository related public details are visible here, right? So we are kind of managed our workflow within Azure DevOps, and we also managed to put out our changes. We can also track our commits, pushes, branches, and also push for the build within files. So this is the flow that we followed for Azure DevOps report section.